If the belly fat around your middle doesn't budge no matter what you do, or your blood sugar is stuck even though you've cut the carbs and you're getting your workouts in, there's a very good chance one small thing is missing from the picture, and it's magnesium. But here's the problem with magnesium. Just taking it doesn't mean it's going to do anything for you. It's not as simple as grabbing a bottle and swallowing a pill, because who actually benefits and how much you need and which form of magnesium do you take matters quite a bit. But if you get this right, magnesium can be one of the most underrated tools when it comes to not just insulin resistance and blood sugar control, but also your energy and your metabolism and your overall health. So in this video, I want to walk you through who actually needs magnesium, because almost half of us don't get enough, and I'll go over how to tell if you're low even when your blood work comes back completely normal. And then I'll walk you through the part that trips up a lot of people, which form of magnesium is right for you, because different types do completely different things. And the right form makes all the difference. And in the end, I'll go over other nutrients and supplements that magnesium works with, the ones that could be holding your blood sugar back without you realizing it. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Leonid Kim. I'm a double board certified physician. And on this channel, my mission is to give you the science and the practical tools to not only live longer, but to feel better today. And even though I'm a physician, I'm not your physician. So please talk to your doctor before making any changes to your health regimen, because this video is educational only and not medical advice. So the first question you need to ask yourself, is your magnesium even low to begin with? Because not everybody's is, but most of us are closer to the low end than we think, and I'll get to why in just a minute. And this question can get pretty tricky, because when it comes to magnesium, you can't answer that with a standard blood test. When your doctor checks your magnesium, most of the time the lab is looking at the level of magnesium in your blood, but less than 1% of your body's magnesium is actually there. And more than 99% of it lives inside your cells and your muscles and your bones. So that blood test is checking the smallest and least useful pool. And it's not just the standard test that's looking in the wrong place. Your body works very hard to keep the blood number looking normal. So when you're not getting enough, it doesn't just let your blood level fall, it borrows from your bones to hold it steady. It's like keeping $20 in your checking account while your savings account is slowly draining to zero. The checking account looks fine, but it's masking a deeper problem. And that's how you can run low for years and still get a normal result on paper. And even the number you're told to hit is set pretty low. The recommended amount, around 400 milligrams a day, was set to keep you out of an actual deficiency or disease, not to have you running your best. And there's a big gap between not deficient and optimal, and a lot of these problems live in that gap. Which begs the question, why are so many of us deficient in the first place? Well, unfortunately, our current food environment is stacked against us. The foods highest in magnesium, so things like nuts and seeds and beans and leafy greens, whole grains, they're the ones who got crowded out as processed and refined foods took over the shelves at our local grocery store. And refining and processing of these foods is a big problem. They strip a grain down into white bread or white rice, and the part that holds the magnesium gets tossed out with it. So a modern diet can leave you running pretty low even when you feel like you're eating plenty. And there's one last thing that can tip you in being deficient. It's not just what you eat, it's also what pulls magnesium out of you. Things like stress and heavy alcohol use, a lot of caffeine. And then there are some very common medications that can also interfere with your magnesium absorption or your metabolism. So these would be your acid reflux drugs or proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole or pantoprazole. And then it could be water pills like hydrochlorothiazide or Lasix. So if that list sounds like your life, the odds that you're running low go up quite a bit. So to put it all together, not getting enough is very common and very easy to do nowadays. And a standard blood test can definitely miss a real magnesium deficiency, and there are a lot of ways to end up low. And for one group in particular, being low matters even more, and that is anyone dealing with high blood sugar. So that includes things like insulin resistance and prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, but also fatty liver or anyone with excess visceral fat. Because magnesium isn't sitting on the sidelines of your blood sugar, it's part of the machinery. When insulin shows up at one of your cells, it has to flip a switch to let sugar in. And that switch is an enzyme called tyrosine kinase, basically the cell's on button, and that process doesn't work without magnesium sitting right there next to it. So when magnesium is low, insulin knocks on the door, but the door barely opens, which means sugar stays in your blood and your body pumps out even more insulin to force it in, and over time, That's the exact setup that makes it easier to store fat around the middle and develop and worsen insulin resistance. And then on top of it, it can turn into a loop. High blood sugar and high insulin make your kidneys dump even more magnesium out in the urine. So the more insulin resistant you get, the more magnesium you lose. And then less magnesium makes you more insulin resistant. Researchers literally call it a vicious circle. And over the years, I've seen this cycle play out over and over again in a lot of my patients. In the Framingham Heart Study, which is one of the longest running studies that we have, the people with the highest magnesium intake had a 51% lower risk of developing diabetes than the people with the lowest. Now, this was an observational study, so they showed a link, not necessarily causation, but we also have actual randomized trials where giving people magnesium improved their insulin sensitivity, and the effect was biggest in the people who were already low or insulin resistant to begin with. So if you're in that high risk group where you're not getting much magnesium from food or you're losing magnesium because of insulin resistance or medications, food is still the foundational piece of how we want to fix this. So this is when you load up on things like leafy greens and nuts and seeds and beans. And if you're going to take a supplement, the form that you pick matters more than almost anything, because this is where it's easy to waste your money. Because magnesium isn't one thing, it's a whole family of forms, and they all behave completely differently once they're inside your body. Some forms are better absorbed than others, and some are easier in your stomach, and certain forms may be better suited for certain situations like sleep, or heart disease, or muscle cramps. So let's break down the ones that you're most likely to see, and then I'll go over a process that will help you decide how to pick the right formulation for you. Now, magnesium glycinate is the one that I reach for the most. It's very well absorbed and it's gentle on your stomach, and it's magnesium bound to glycine, which is an amino acid that has a calming effect of its own. So if your issues are sleep or feeling wound up, this is usually the one I'll lean towards. And since better sleep also helps your blood sugar, you're getting 2 wins from a simple pill. Now, if in addition to insulin resistance, you're also concerned about your heart health, well then this is where I will look at magnesium taurate. So this is the combo where you pair magnesium with taurine, and taurine on its own has been shown to lower blood pressure and improve blood vessel function in people with type 2 diabetes. So pairing a magnesium makes sense on paper, and there could be some theoretical synergy, but the evidence behind the combination itself is pretty sparse, and as of right now, it's not very well established. And then magnesium citrate is another popular formulation. It's pretty well absorbed at smaller doses, and it's been shown to lower blood pressure and A1C. But it can cause more GI upset and diarrhea than magnesium glycinate. In fact, at higher doses, it's actually used as a laxative or as a prep for colonoscopies. And then there's magnesium l-threonate, and it's supposed to improve your brain health and memory. But there are 2 things you need to know about this formulation. It actually gives you very little elemental magnesium, so I would not rely on it to fix a deficiency. And the brain benefits are still based on small studies, and a lot of these studies were industry funded. And then there's magnesium malate. Now this one is interesting because in early studies, this combination seems to be pretty well absorbed, and it reaches particularly good levels in the muscle tissue. So in theory, it could help with things like fatigue and cramps and recovery from exercise. It's pretty well tolerated from a GI standpoint, but once again, not a whole lot of actual human data to lean on. I think for most people, magnesium glycinate makes a lot of sense. It's pretty well absorbed and it doesn't cause as much GI distress as other formulations. Now, every time I talk about magnesium, the most common question I get is which supplement I use. And I personally take magnesium glycinate by Metagenics because based on my research, it seems to offer the best combination of quality and price that I was able to find on Amazon. And I'm gonna put a link to that in the description below. And honestly, there's so many brands out there, and I'm sure a lot of them are good. Just make sure the one that you pick is third-party tested. Okay, so how do you actually take magnesium? And let's start with the numbers. The daily target, the RDA, is around 400 to 420 milligrams for men, and it's around 310 to 320 milligrams for women. And that's your total for the day, food and supplement combined. And I would think of it as the floor, the amount that keeps you out of a deficiency, but not necessarily keeps you at an optimal level. And some people genuinely need more magnesium, especially if you're in one of those higher risk groups that we talked about, or you're an athlete, or you sweat a lot, or you're under constant stress, all those can mean that you run through about 10 to 20% more magnesium than the average person. But supplements do have an upper limit though, around 350 milligrams a day, and some people can go higher, but this is usually where you may start running into diarrhea. But that cap is only for supplements. Magnesium from food doesn't count against it because your body clears that extra magnesium without a problem. And on the practical side, you actually absorb magnesium better in smaller amounts than in one big dose. So if you're taking more, ideally we spread out across the day. And if you're taking magnesium for sleep, well then we want to take it as an evening dose as well. And when you're searching for different formulations, make sure to look at the label and look for elemental magnesium. That's the real magnesium, and we don't want to get that confused with the weight of the whole capsule. And the exact amount that's right for you, well, that depends on a lot of individual factors. So things like your kidney function and your other medical conditions, what medications you're taking, and how much magnesium you're already getting from food. So definitely talk to your doctor about the best form and the right dose for you, as everybody's needs will be very different. Now finally, magnesium doesn't work alone. There are a few other nutrients that it's tied to, and if you're low on these, they could be keeping your blood sugar stuck no matter what else you're doing right. And the big one is vitamin D. This connection between vitamin D and magnesium actually runs both ways. The vitamin D that comes as a supplement is inactive. Your body has to switch it on in 2 steps, and both of those steps need magnesium. So if you've been taking vitamin D for months and your levels just won't climb, well, low magnesium may be the reason it's stuck. And it works the other way too. Vitamin D itself is tied to better insulin sensitivity. When researchers pulled the big randomized trials, vitamin D cut the risk of prediabetes turning into full type 2 diabetes by about 15%. In fact, the 2024 Endocrine Society guidelines now recommend vitamin D for adults with prediabetes at doses above the standard RDA, specifically to lower their risk. And another supplement that could help is fish oil or omega-3s. Now, fish oil mostly helps indirectly by reducing inflammation. And inflammation is one of the things that drives insulin resistance. And just like with other supplements, but especially with omega-3s, dosing is very important and we don't want to take too much. And I actually made a separate video on that whole topic, and I'm going to leave a link to that over here. Alright, I hope this was helpful. Stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.